Yeah, so your coworker talking about witches and warlocks and giants online. There's only the one witch that I'm aware of in 1 Samuel, which is the Witch of Endor. You're aware of this one? It's kind of weird.
Like it goes in secrecy and all that. No.
It's kind of weird. Samuel dies. Saul goes to this witch and wants to talk to Samuel, and she somehow successfully brings Samuel's ghost back so that he can talk to Samuel. It's super weird. And that's the only place that I'm aware of where there's like a legit witch that we would talk about as like doing some sort of like really weird witchiness.
Yeah.
So yeah, anything else that would be referred to as witchcraft that I can think of off the top of my head is pretty tame, as far as what we would think of as witchcraft. The giants thing is the conversation about the Nephilim, and what you have are the sons of God and the daughters of men, and the debate about who the sons of God are, who the daughters of men are, and who the Nephilim are. So the sons of God could be angels. That's what his take is likely going to be, and then daughters of men would be humans. Sons of God could be, if you remember back to yesterday when we were talking about the fall, Cain kills Abel, and then after that, Adam and Eve have another son named Seth. So you have Cain and Seth. Well, there's a curse placed on Cain, and there's not a curse placed on Seth. So another interpretation of this would be that the sons of God would be the line of Seth, and the daughters of men would be the line of Cain. And then another interpretation of this would be there are places where royalty are referred to as the sons of God. And so the sons of God in that instance would be like royalty, and the daughters of men would be like commoners or something like that. The Nephilim, we're not really sure how to translate that. That's literally just the Hebrew word written in English characters. Like
So what's the Hebrew word?
The Hebrew word is Nephilim. Like, we're just not really sure what to do with it. And so some English translations will say, instead of Nephilim, they'll say giants, right? Like the King James says giants. It's Genesis 6:4. So Nephilim in Hebrew, Nephal, means to fall. And so Nephilim is the plural of that, so it's fallen ones. But what that means, there are a lot of people that are like, that's fallen angels, right? What's your translation say in verse 4?
Nephilim.
Nephilim, yeah. Yeah, there are, there's, like Quentin was saying, there's a lot of people that are just really into talking about this kind of stuff. And
Well, he straight up said, I'm a really big conspiracy theorist, so I was like,
yeah.
I'll just take it with a grain of salt.
So, yeah.
What was the curse placed on Cain?
I forget. It's in Genesis 4. I forget God says something to Cain about being cursed. Let me just scroll back to it since I'm here.
I have another question though.
I incite questions.
Clearly.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah, so,
Hey.
Your brother's blood is crying out to me from the ground. Now you are cursed from the ground, which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. When you till the ground, it will no longer yield to you its strength. You will be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth. Then Cain says, my punishment is greater than I can bear. Today you've driven me away from the soil, and I shall be hidden from your face. I'll be a fugitive and a wanderer. Anyone who meets me will kill me. And the Lord says, not so. Whoever kills Cain will suffer a sevenfold vengeance. And then he put a mark on Cain so that no one who came upon him would kill him. Then Cain went away from the presence of the Lord and settled in the land of Nod, east of Eden. So that's the curse on Cain. And a lot of the crazy conspiracy theory people, there are people who say that the mark of Cain is this is where vampires come from. or this is where werewolves come from, right, or stuff like that. There's lots of weird theories about things that are in the Bible, right? There's just a lot of weird theories about that stuff. There's also, this is one of the places in Scripture where people have used the passage to justify racism. Because they'll say the mark of Cain is darker skin. And so if you're bearing the mark of Cain, it's because you're not white, right? Now, obviously that's just like ludicrous, but there are people that use that kind of stuff in passages like this.
I'm not surprised.
When it says
Can you go back to the Cain thing? Yeah.
So, yeah, okay, after that, I have another question.
Yeah, here you go. There you go. This much.
Hey, you called it about yesterday about us having all the questions.
Yeah.
I told you I was either going to be really talkative or really quiet.
It's true.
And we were just quiet.
I've never heard that. I've never heard the concept of the daughters of Cain being commoners and such and such. I think that's, I like that interpretation,
Yeah,
honestly.
yeah,
It
yeah.
makes more sense. As
Yeah.
Cain would be considered lower than Seth.
Yeah.
So I've never heard that.
Yeah, it's the difficulty that you have with that, the response that most people will make with that is if you go to Genesis 6, it seems to indicate that these Nephilim are the children, and they're like these like spectacular beings, right? And so the strength in believing that the sons of God are angels is that it seems like it's saying that the people that come from this union are somehow very unique. And if you trace this through the Old Testament, the Nephilim lead to this group of people called the Anakim, and the one notable Anakim in the Old Testament is Goliath. Goliath is an Anakim, so he is a descendant of the Nephilim.
I have a question off that.
And he's, 9'6".
Right.
So,
What?
Yeah.
yeah,
Big old jack.
I mean, I knew he was big, but I was thinking like
Well, he's 3 feet taller than
7'5".
He's like 3 feet taller than me. Oh.
Tall dude. Yeah. According to our best estimates of like their measurements converted to our measurements, it'd be, if I remember correctly, it's like 9'6". So he's a big dude.
Tall dude. Well, I have a question about that. So,
Sure.
David picked up multiple stones. I heard opinions of like he picked up other stones to kill his brothers at the same time. Yeah, like those stones, because he has, I don't remember. He has a certain amount of brothers and all, he grabbed one for each one. And he was ready for each one.
Maybe?
I don't remember.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I haven't.
You haven't heard that?
Yeah, I haven't. Well, yeah, I mean, I may have at some point, but I don't remember.
I remember it from like.
That he was going to just basically kill all of Goliath's family?
He was ready for it.
Yeah, he was ready to go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he does pick up more than one stone, and he only needs one.
Mm-hmm.
But does he know that he only needs one?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I don't know that the text gives us much. It's possible.
I want to say there's other stuff related to that, but yeah.
Yeah.
I've heard that from people.
Yeah, it's definitely possible. There's a lot of stuff in Scripture that it's sort of like we're just sort of giving our best guess at like, what is this? So, yeah, the Nephilim, I can tell you a funny story about the Nephilim. The weirdest thing that's ever happened to me in a church was because of the Nephilim. Like we were saying, lots of people like to talk about this stuff. Well, there's this guy at a church that I was on staff for, and every time that I would preach, or a lot of the times that he would just see me, he would come up to me and have just like the weirdest questions in the world. And I feel like just about every church has like one of these people that's just like, I want to talk about the weirdest thing that has ever occurred. And every Sunday I'm going to try to like corner somebody on staff and talk to them about the weirdest thing that's ever occurred. And so this guy would just come talk to me like every week, right? And he's a nice guy, you know, and conversations were fine, you know, it's like, it's whatever, you know. And I didn't preach that often, so it didn't happen like all the time, but it happened a lot. Well, this one Sunday, I was preaching, and about like, I don't know, there's like 3 or 4 minutes left in my sermon, and I need to pee. And so I'm like, I'm gonna wrap this up, and then I'm straight to the bathroom, right? So I wrap everything up, and I do what my wife, who is a genius, calls the pastor swim, which is like when you go into the congregation and you're like, nice to see you, nice to see you, nice to see you, nice to see you, right? Because you're just like trying to get past people, right? Because everybody wants to stop and talk to you if you've just preached. And so like I'm doing the pastor swim, right? Trying to get to the bathroom, right? I successfully get to the bathroom.
Oh,
I walk up to the urinal and am finally getting relief. And the door opens behind me. And can I pick on you for a second? Just
Sure.
you want to stand up here?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So this is what happens, okay? You're going to be me.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to be the other person, right? So yeah. So he walks up and he's like, so what do you think about the Nephilim in Genesis 6?
I'm like, excuse me?
I've never been more uncomfortable in my life. Like,
I bet.
just, like, there should just be a rule that, like, you don't touch me when we're in the bathroom. Like, you don't talk to me when we're in the bathroom. Like,
Isn't
that's
that like
just,
a rule for guys?
it should be.
Yeah,
I mean, isn't it like an unspoken rule?
Unless
It
you're
is.
like, there's one urinal in between you two, and you're just like, how you doing?
Yeah, you gotta have a buffer, right? You gotta have a buffer. There's definitely no touching,
Yeah,
right? Definitely,
Okay,
you do not put your
unless
hands on
it's
my
like-
shoulders.
Unless it's a friend where you just shove him in.
Fair, yeah.
That's
Yeah.
a thing? Y'all are nasty.
So this is the weirdest thing that's ever happened to me in church, and
Ugh.
it's because of the Nephilim.
Were you talking about that or something?
No, I wasn't even in the Old Testament. It had nothing to do with the Nephilim. He just, that Sunday, for whatever reason, was cranked up about the Nephilim and came to me in the bathroom and started rubbing my shoulders and asking me about the Nephilim.
And your response to that whole experience was what?
I honestly don't remember what I said. I know what I wanted to say,
You're
but
probably
I did not say what I wanted to say. Yeah, so it was very strange. So I probably just said something diplomatic of like, yeah, I'm not really sure. There's a lot of different opinions, you know, not really sure what's going on there. It's really
Trying to get out of it.
interesting passage.
Just get your hands off my shoulders, guys.
Yeah, exactly. Let's move this along. Maybe you can leave. That'd be great. So, yeah. Anyway, so that's Genesis 6. Genesis 6 is a bizarre passage for sure. And there are several passages in the Bible that are just weird, like really weird passages. We had at LPVA, we had a guest speaker come one time. His name's John Walton. He's an Old Testament scholar. He knows more about the Old Testament than I ever will. And so he did a Q&A with our students, and one of our students got up and asked about this passage in, I don't think it's in Exodus, but it's in the Pentateuch. It might be in Numbers. I don't remember off the top of my head, but it's in the Pentateuch. It's with Moses. God apparently wanted to kill Moses and was going to kill Moses. And Moses' wife circumcises their son and takes the foreskin and throws it at Moses' feet. And God decides not to kill Moses. And so my student asks John Walton, who Old Testament expert, knows more about the Old Testament than I ever will, right? And he's like, I was wondering, and there's this weird thing in the Pentateuch with Moses, and he gets that far, and the passage is called the bridegroom of blood. He gets that far, and John Walton's like, bridegroom of blood? And my student was like, yeah. And John Walton's like, yeah, we don't know. We're not sure. It's weird. so there's some stuff in the Bible that is just like, yeah, that's weird. That's just a weird thing, and we're not sure what to do with it. And I mean, the Witch of Endor, honestly, is like one of those things that you're like, I don't know how this witch successfully brought Samuel back as a ghost so that Samuel could yell at Saul. Like, I don't know how that works. Like, there's nothing in the text that explains it. There's nothing that's like, it's bizarre, right? And you're like, I would really love, like,
Some context.
yeah, I'd like some, like, clarification on how this worked, why this worked, like,
Explain.
like, it just worked. Moving on, you know?
Oh yeah, this thing happened, by the way. It's not like it's miraculous or anything. Anyways.
Yeah, moving on to the other thing. Yeah, it's super weird. It's super weird. And there's a lot of stuff like that in the Bible. And that's why, like, when we talk about reading the Bible, like how to read the Bible, you should read it over and over again until you start to notice the weird things. Because there are weird things, right?
I
Like,
think the whole Bible has just weird things.
Yep.
In every passage.
Yeah, I mean, there's some passages that are pretty open and closed, like pretty straightforward, but there are a lot of passages that are super weird. And that's what we got to do. We got to read it until we can start to see that, like, oh yeah, this is strange. Why is it strange? And then, you know, do some research, that sort of thing. So we're not sure. Could be angels. Could be something else. Who knows?
Does it matter?
No.
Then why is it mentioned?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff in Scripture that, like, that was important to someone, and they wrote it down. But what do we do with it? I don't really know. So, yeah.
One day it'll be important to somebody else.
Yeah.
And then everybody will be like, oh my God, you figured it out?
I don't know if anybody's ever going to really crack that nut with the Nephilim, because there's definitely, it's a tough one. There's a lot of really strong opinions, and there are a lot of people that really think they have it figured out.
Oh yeah. Who
But-
was that guy? Who was like, I know.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
I was
even
like,
like scholars, like people with PhDs, there are people who have written books that are like, this is what it is. And you're like, well, but,
I don't think it's ever going to be really figured out because, like, they could be right, but too many people are skeptical about it. So it's never
Fair.
really going to be figured out.
Well, and also, we're talking about something that's so long
Far back.
ago that, I mean,
It's not relevant.
it's, well, not just that it's not relevant, it's just like, it's pretty mysterious for us being 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 years removed from it, however long ago the flood would have happened. And so, like, because the flood is like right after that, right? Like, there's the Nephilim, and then Noah, and then the flood. And so the Nephilim, like, that's like ancient history. I mean, Abraham is 2000 BC, and the flood is way before Abraham. So, like, weird,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, keep them off on that.
Yeah,
Over
yeah.
the whole thing. Like, I was
I
Yeah.
feel like somebody's, if time travel is ever figured out. Like, well, we go back and see Jesus, we're going to go see what the Nephilim is.
Yeah,
Probably, yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's, well, again, like we talked about yesterday with Genesis 1 to 11, right? That section of Genesis, there's just a lot in there that's like, I don't know, like, not sure. So, yeah. Fun times. Yay, Nephilim.
Yeah.
So we went through this yesterday towards the end of our time, right? The formation, then the Davidic Reformation, Prophetic Reformation, Babylonian Reformation. So these are places where we have shifts, significant shifts in what it means to be Jewish. And most of the time this relates to the three things for Abraham, right? Land, nation, and Messiah, land, nation, and ruler, that sort of thing, right? So looking at the Pentateuch at a glance, Pentateuch is just one of the ways that we can refer to the first 5 books of the Bible, books of Moses, the Torah, the Pentateuch. So we have Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, and Numbers, and then Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy is a little bit separate because it's just a repetition of all the things. Deuteronomy literally in English means second law. And so if you recall, the Israelites, the first generation that are leaving Exodus or leaving Egypt, aren't able to go into the Promised Land. Their children are able to go into the Promised Land, and so when their children are able to go in, the children have to hear all of the law again. And so Deuteronomy is just the repetition of the law for that second generation. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, and Numbers is the story of that first generation, and then Numbers is kind of the transition between the first and the second generation. Genesis is creation, fall, flood, nations in Genesis 1 to 11, and then Genesis 12 to 50 is Abraham and his descendants. Exodus, which is literally names, we talked about that yesterday a little bit. Exodus 1 to 15 is escape from Egypt, or another way of putting that is getting Israel out of Egypt. And then Exodus 16 to 40 is getting Egypt out of Israel. That's them receiving the law and then getting to know Yahweh better. Then Leviticus is pertaining to the Levites. That's what Leviticus means. In Hebrew, it's Vayikra, and Vayikra is and he called. So what we have in Exodus to Leviticus is Exodus ends with God and Moses and the tabernacle. And the question at the end of Exodus is, how are the Israelites going to really be with Yahweh if Yahweh is so holy? And the very beginning of Leviticus is Vayikra el Moshe Adonai, which is, and the Lord called to Moses. And he's calling to Moses from the tabernacle, and the point of Leviticus is he's going to explain how the Israelites are going to be with him even in his holiness. And then at the end of Leviticus, they're actually able to be in the tabernacle. They're not in the Holy of Holies because of what they've done with Leviticus. Then Numbers is Bamidbar in Hebrew, which is in the desert. And so Numbers is wandering in the desert. Numbers is just a bunch of cycles. So you have, just the same thing sort of happening over and over and over again. And then,
The box you were expecting.
oh, awesome. I'm glad that came already. That's awesome. There were some things that I forgot, and my wife had to ship them to me from Virginia. And so she shipped them on Monday, and they just showed up today. So,
That's pretty fast shipping.
what was that?
That's pretty fast shipping.
Yeah. It could have been here yesterday, but we would have had to pay almost $200 for that. And I was like, no, let's not do that. Let's not. So, so Numbers is just repetitive cycles, right? Just same thing over and over and over again. The Israelites are just wandering around the same area. And then, like I said, Deuteronomy is repetition for the second generation. This is the first 5 books of the Bible. This is how that story lays out. We can look at that as sort of a whole narrative with Sinai, which is where the law is given, as the center. We have an introduction of God's story of blessing in Genesis all the way up to sort of the end of Genesis 11. And then we have the development of that story of blessing, and then the conclusion of that story of blessing. And in the development, we have pre-Sinai, Sinai, and post-Sinai, which is going to Sinai, receiving the law, and then leaving Sinai. So the center of the Pentateuch really is the reception of the law, the 10 Commandments, and everything else that comes while they're at Sinai. And so what we have here in our image of Moses smashing the tablets, right, that is kind of the central thing in the Pentateuch, the most important thing in the Pentateuch. All of the laws and everything that happens even in the prophets calls back to the law, calls back to 10 Commandments, and there's actually 613 laws in Leviticus, and so it calls back to all of that stuff. So, a lot of laws. So, yeah. So, Genesis then, we've talked a little bit about historicity, whether or not this was historical, that kind of stuff. The further back we get, the more we have to sort of say, we're not really sure what happened. We get all the way back to Genesis 6, and it's sort of like, I don't know what went down there, There's the problem with A&E genealogies. Ancient Near Eastern is what A&E refers to, Ancient Near Eastern. So within the globe, from our perspective, we have Far Eastern and Near Eastern, right? Far Eastern would be like China, Japan, etc. Near Eastern would be like Israel and that region. And so Near Eastern and then in the ancient world, so ancient Near East, right? So A&E genealogies, ancient Near Eastern genealogies, if you remember, you're only going to mention the people who are important, right? You're going to skip the generations that don't add to your honor claim, right? That makes sense? And so ancient Near Eastern genealogies, we have to be really careful that we're not just adding these up and saying, well, this is how old everything is, because that's not really what they're intended to do. Egypt unites in around 3000 BCE, and I use BCE here because sometimes I teach in secular environments too, like non-church environments, and outside of Christianity, people tend to use BCE and CE instead of BC and AD, but they're the same thing.
What is BCE?
BCE is before the Common Era, and CE is the Common Era. BC is before Christ, and AD is not after death. That's what everybody thinks it is, but it's not. It's actually Latin. It's Anno Domini, which is in the year of our Lord. Yeah. And so AD doesn't mean after death, because it's not like, you know, Jesus was born and then lives and then dies, and then that's when the calendar starts, right? Yeah, Jesus dies in 33, 34 AD, and so it's not after death. That's what everybody tends to think it is. So BC and AD are before Christ and Anno Domini in the year of our Lord, and BCE and CE are before the Common Era. Both of them are splitting time at Jesus. Just one of them is explicitly using Jesus' name, and the other one is not. Right? And so if I'm teaching in a secular environment, I'm going to typically not use the one that uses Jesus' name, because it's just not worth fighting over that, right? It's just not worth fighting over that. So, so I've taught at like a local university to me back home, Radford University, and I've used some of these slides, and I'm just not going to try to have that fight with a bunch of people that aren't Christians. So, so Egypt unites in and around 3000 BCE. Pyramids begin to be built in the third dynasty around 2700 BC. This is another one of those popular misconceptions, because a lot of people will look at like the Israelites in slavery in Egypt, and they're like, yeah, the Israelites built the pyramids. No, the pyramids were over 1,000 years old by the time the Israelites were there. Pyramids were 700 years old or so by the time Abraham was there. So the pyramids were super old already by the time Abraham shows up. And so the Israelites did not build the pyramids. But, you know, we'll see movies or whatever, or cartoons or whatever of Moses, and it's like the Israelites are building the pyramids.
What were they doing as slaves then?
Building other stuff. Yeah. Yeah, the Egyptians built a lot of stuff, and a lot of it is still around. And so they're still enslaved, and they're still building things. They're just not building the pyramids. So Abraham probably lives around 2000 BCE. Joseph probably lives around 1900 BCE. Joseph is sort of the end of Genesis. So 12 to 50 goes from Abraham to
That's where it went. I was like, what?
Yeah. Abraham's story, we talked a little bit yesterday about covenant. Specifically with Abraham's covenant, there's some interesting things happening in the passage of with his covenant. And so there are passages, but one specific passage. There's the binding agreement, making of peace. We talked about this stuff yesterday, becoming one in some sense, maybe between unequal parties. And there's usually rituals. Well, what we have here, this is an old carving, like a wood carving, to depict Abraham in his covenant with God. Can you see what these are? What's going on here?
Sacrifice.
Yeah, sacrifices. Can you see what's happened to them, though?
Their bones.
You can see the inside, right? So it's the animal's been cut in half, right? And so one of the things that would happen in covenant ceremonies in the ancient world is you would cut an animal in half, and then you would walk in between the two pieces. And that's a part of the covenant ceremony. And what you're doing with that, yeah, that look right there, that's how you feel about it, right? You're like, right? You walk in between the two pieces because what you're saying symbolically, going through the two pieces of the animal, is if I break the covenant, let this happen to me, right? And it's sort of like a physical, visible reminder of the severity of the covenant, right? That I'm going to keep my promise in my covenant with you, and if I break it, I agree with you that this should happen to me, that I should be cut in half.
That makes sense. Like,
But it's
because
gory.
like Judea and Jerusalem are Israel.
Yeah.
They split into two.
Yeah.
So.
And so this idea of like, if we don't keep the covenant, we're gonna be split in two. Well, what happens with Abraham is, you see here in the carving, he's sort of like asleep, right?
Yeah.
He's got his axe there that he's cut the animals in half with, and he's asleep on the rock. What you have in this passage is you have this thing called like a smoking cauldron or a smoking pot or something like that, that it passes between the animals. Abraham, in the covenant with Yahweh, Abraham does not pass between the animals. And the reason for this is, well, what do you think it would be? If we have split animals and Abraham and Yahweh are going to make a covenant, and Yahweh passes through the animals, what's Yahweh saying?
They covenant to him, like, because he promised the land, nation, and all that stuff, and Abraham didn't have any requirements for him to fulfill.
Yeah, so when Yahweh passes through, he's saying, if I don't keep the covenant, what? What's Yahweh saying about the covenant? If I don't keep the covenant as Yahweh, what will happen to me? Get split in half, right? Yeah, that he's saying, like, I am promising with my life that I will keep the covenant, right? By not having Abraham pass through it, what is that communicating to Abraham? That if Abraham doesn't keep the covenant, what's going to happen?
Nothing.
Well, not nothing. Who's passed through the animals?
Why? No. Does it? Wait. Hold on.
I think you confused her.
I've had a malfunction.
I just
Hold
broke
on.
her
There might be a
brain.
separation.
Wait. So Yahweh passes through it to be split in two.
Yeah.
If he doesn't keep it.
Yeah.
Which means if Abraham didn't have to go through it, and he doesn't keep the covenant, doesn't that go back onto Yahweh?
Yeah.
So it happens if Abraham doesn't keep it either.
Yeah.
So all the punishment is just going to him.
Yeah.
I hate this.
Why?
That's not fair.
But that's God.
I don't like it.
You don't like
I
God?
like it, but like I
Ah!
don't like. Yeah. I don't like how unfair. Like, did Abraham even try to like insist, or did he just be like, "Oh yeah, totally, I'm fine with not getting punished"?
Well, I mean, when you're in a conversation with a deity, I don't know how much insisting is appropriate.
Well, you could just be
There
like, "Hey
was
God,
a
like I
time
don't
where,
feel
like,
comfortable with that."
Was it where like he debated with God? There's like more
Sure,
big-
for other people,
Yeah.
right? For Sodom and Gomorrah,
Yeah.
right? If there's 100 righteous men, if there's 50 righteous men, right?
You just-
Yeah, and so you debate with God there. But if God's like directly talking about like you and him and your relationship, like there's a certain point at which you just sort of have to be like, yeah, you're God and you get to do what you want. And so
Okay, well, I would be like that, but at the same time, if it were me, I'd be like, "But God, that's all the punishment on you. Why am I not getting any of it?"
and see that
That's why.
that's part of the problem that we have in Christianity, right? Is that our approach to faith is like, I'm gonna do my part, right? God, like, yeah, you pass through the animals, but like, I mean, also like, I'm gonna pass through. Like, I'm gonna do my part. I'm gonna add to this.
Okay, but he didn't pass through them.
Right.
It's only Yahweh, which means
Right.
all the punishment, if Abraham doesn't follow, goes on to Yahweh.
Right.
Which how is that, like, how does that incite him, Abraham, to follow with the covenant?
Because he loves Yahweh and doesn't want anything bad to happen to Yahweh.
Okay, so it's all on, like, the emotion.
All in faith.
All in.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say like all on the emotion. I mean, it's all in the context of the relationship,
Yeah.
right? Like,
But he's a human. So
Sure.
regardless if he loves Yahweh or not,
sure.
like, he could fall right back into
Yeah.
temptation, and
Yeah,
isn't that
definitely.
what happens?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Exactly. And
Right.
and Yahweh knew that before he even did this. So
Right.
why the heck would he put all the punishment on him, even though he knew he was going to get hurt?
Because he's the only one that can take the punishment. Because if he puts the punishment on Abraham, then that will end the relationship between him and Abraham. If he puts the punishment on Isaac, on Jacob, on any of Abraham's descendants, if he puts the punishment on us, we will not be able to stand. So the only way for him to sustain relationship with us,
Then why have a punishment?
because otherwise it would violate his character.
But it's violating his character regardless because he's putting that punishment on him, which means they're not getting punished.
That's not violating his character.
How?
How would it be?
Because he has to have a punishment somehow, right?
Yeah.
So then why is that punishment on him? I'm sorry, y'all.
So why is that a violation of his character, though?
I mean, it's not, but like, it doesn't make sense.
So, but this is what I'm saying, is we have the tendency, as humans, that we want to play our part,
Yes.
right? But we can't.
Then I guess I'll die. Sucks.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying we can't play our part and so you're going to have to die. What I'm saying is we can't play our part and so God plays that part for us. You can't pay for your sin.
I feel
No
really
matter-
pressured with how much God cares.
Why?
I don't know. This is like, it's
This is a
uncomfortable.
loving God.
It's uncomfortable. It's
Okay.
weird. Like, it doesn't make sense.
Do you feel like the amount of love that he has for you puts on you some kind of obligation?
Not an obligation, no.
Okay.
It's like, it doesn't make sense to me. I can't wrap my head around it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's...
I understand that that's just him, like, you can't wrap your head around God, but, like,
Yeah.
I want to.
And there's nothing wrong with that. Trust me, as someone who has invested lots of time and money in trying to understand God, I am not at all trying to tell you, don't try, right? Like, you should. Like, it's noble to want to learn more about him and want to understand him more. But at the same time, you have to recognize that there are limitations on our ability to understand him.
Yeah. I'm aware of that, too.
Yeah. And it's challenging, and it is frustrating. It is frustrating when you want to understand him to run up against the I can't understand him, right? Like it's frustrating when you're like, but I want to understand him, right? I get that.
I want to understand why he, like, I mean, I know why, but, like, why?
It's love,
That doesn't make sense to me.
but that's what love is. Yeah, that's what love is. Love is self-sacrificial and self-giving, right? Like that's what love is. Yeah.
I mean, I love a lot of people, but not that much.
Yeah.
Like, I'm
You're
not
also
telling
not God.
you. Yeah, but like, if
Right?
I'm telling you, you're getting a punishment. You're getting a punishment. I might give you one
Sure.
or two chances to like get out of it,
Sure,
even though I'm
sure.
like, you have one chance. No, I'll give you like
Sure.
3, 4, 5, whatever.
Sure.
But like, you're gonna get it at some point if you just
Yeah.
continue doing the same thing. We've done this for however many years. It's
Yeah.
a lot of zeros
Yeah.
in the years,
Yeah.
and he's still like, oh, but I love y'all.
Mhm.
You're my perfect creations that are imperfect, perfectly made with me. Da 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 da. Like what? Okay.
If you were God, you would have squashed us by now.
No, probably not.
No.
If I was God, I would have squashed us by now.
I would have
Right.
squashed certain
You would
people.
suck.
Yes, definitely. Definitely.
I would
Right.
squash like the people that are like, let me just like kill people in your name real quick because
Yeah.
like that's totally right. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
excuse me?
Yeah.
Misinterpreting much?
Yeah.
No. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, this is just giving me a headache. My head is not it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the challenge here is this isn't something that we often see, right? We don't see this even from parents all of the time, or from siblings, or from like this is the kind of love that we should experience, but we don't often experience.
Unconditionally love.
Yeah,
I've only had that once.
yeah, and so it's hard to grapple with this when you haven't experienced it.
Yeah,
Right.
that's where I'm at. I think that's where I'm at right now. I'm like,
Yeah.
cause like for me, like getting love always came with a certain like condition.
Yeah.
Intentional or unintentional.
Yeah.
So I've never like anything
Yeah.
like that. No.
Yeah.
I haven't had unconditional love except with one person, and it was whenever I was really, really little. They died when I was 9.
Yeah.
So I only had them for like 6 years.
Yeah.
And then I put my life on hold for 6 years after that.
Yeah.
So it was a whole thing, right?
Yeah.
And then I like live with my aunt and uncle now.
Yeah.
And like that's great and all, but like it's still almost like conditional, you know?
Sure.
Like it's not like unconditional love. Like
Yeah.
that's just not how that is.
Well, I can appreciate where you're coming from with that, and it does make accepting this sort of thing more difficult when you don't have a specific experience that you can tie it to, right? That you can't imagine that God is just like a better version of your granddad, or a better version of your dad, or a better version of your mom, or a better version of your grandma, or whoever it is, right? If you don't have that person, if you don't have that experience, it makes this much harder. But it makes this that much more important, right? That this is the kind of thing that you would experience, even if not from people, definitely from God. And so I personally hope that this is something that you get to experience from people, but definitely hope that this is something that you get to experience from God in a more tangible way, because it's important, right? It's important that we connect with Him and recognize that this isn't something that He's not saying like I'll love you if, or I'll love you until, right? That none of that is happening.
Thick and thin, no matter
Yeah.
what.
Yeah, no matter what we do, no matter who we
How
are,
bad
no
it
matter
is,
no matter what we say, yeah. So, would it be okay if I pray for you real quick?
Sure.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to make you feel super weird, but also like I feel like this is kind of an important thing.
I didn't expect it. So go ahead. I mean,
So-
I don't mind.
Okay.
It was
Okay.
unexpected, so I was like, hello.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Jesus, I thank you that you care for Lily more than anyone else has ever cared for her, and Lord, even more than anybody will be able to. And God, in the midst of that, I just ask that you would help her to see that tangibly in her life, whether it's through a person or whether it's through something that you do for her, that she would just begin to see in her life in tangible ways the just ridiculous love that you have for her, regardless of what she's done, regardless of what she's said, regardless of what people have done to her or around her or said to her around her, that all of that stuff will just get washed away in your extravagant love for her in ways that she can hold on to that moving forward in her life. And that this would be something that she would have as a foundation that she wouldn't get shaken by anybody, whether they're family, friends, whatever, that none of those things would be able to shake her. And God, I ask that you do this, Lord, not just for her, but for the people that she's going to be around, the people that she'll minister to, her future family, that you would do this God, not just for her, and even not just for them, but Lord, for the sake of your name, for the sake of your kingdom, for the sake of your glory. In the name of your Son. Amen. Yeah, I can appreciate, like, it's tough. It's tough. And, you know, for me, for a really long time when I was a kid, I had a hard time just believing that God loved me at all. Like, I felt more like God tolerated me than God loved me. And so I can appreciate that. But it's a big, it's really important personally, but also, you know, when you get into a relationship, like the way that you relate to other people is going to be shaped by how you understand love. Like that's a really big deal. So, which isn't to say like, isn't to like put any kind of condemnation on you that like, oh, you can't be in a relationship until you know, no, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that like, everything will get better the more that you appreciate this, the more that you appreciate the fact that he is not abusive, he is not derogatory, he is not conditional. That is not what he does, right? That is not how he behaves. And so from that, everything else in your life will get better, will get easier. So, which isn't to say life will be easy, because it's not, but it will be easier. So, is that helpful? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we can talk about that more later if you want, or definitely, I would say it's worth following up and talking with Quentin or Brenda or whoever else to like process this kind of stuff, because this isn't just like learn about it. Like this is like deep emotional. Like you gotta process this stuff. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like a bomb drop kind of thing. That's why I was like, what?
Yeah.
Because I like that, like, because when we were learning about it this week, it was like condition. And then you're telling me he took the conditions onto himself and not onto them. And I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
So it's a whole thing.
Yeah, well, and I mean, this is prefiguring the cross, right? Because this is what Jesus does, right? Because God basically, in this covenant with Abraham, is telling Abraham that even if you fail, I'm going to take the penalty, right? And that's what Jesus does. Jesus takes the penalty. And so that is the story of Scripture from beginning to end, is the penalty has to be paid because God is just. But God doesn't require the penalty to be paid by us because God is love. And he does not diminish his love for his justice, and he does not diminish his justice for his love. They are both equal, right? But he is perfectly just and perfectly loving because the penalty must be paid, but he pays the penalty, right? And so that's how that works. Yeah.
I figured out like a couple of years ago. I was like, we are not the judges. He is. Like all the stuff that people do wrong to you, they'll they'll do it. And I'll judge in heaven.
Yeah.
And don't keep holding that in.
Right.
Because I had a problem with that at one point.
Yeah.
It's constantly like.
It's hard. It's hard.
When they do something like really wrong to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's for me. I do okay when people do wrong things to me. I have a really hard time when people do wrong things to people I love. Mm-hmm. I have like a really, really hard time with that. And so that's really challenging for me. And we talked about Jonah this morning in Dephos. I don't know if you read Jonah last night. But I mean, the issue in Jonah is he doesn't want them to be forgiven, right? He has that sort of mentality of like they're bad and they shouldn't be forgiven, and how dare you forgive them? And that's not the right approach to have, right? We should want God to forgive everybody, even the people that we don't want God to forgive, right? It's tough. It's tough.